And now some might say this segment would be better suited for a, let's say, Alex Jones type of show, but please, hear me out before rushing to judgment on this one. As some of you might know, I am not, to put it mildly, the greatest fan of our dear dear Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. However, the information that was brought to my attention recently is nothing to joke about or to take lightly at all. Now, I do not want to spread any illicit rumors or malicious disinformation, but it definitely seems like there might be more to the story here. So if you've seen my recent series about the, I guess we can all agree on that one, somewhat mysterious Trudeau family, you are already well aware of the fact that his mother, Justin's mother, that is, Margaret clearly displays all of the dark triad personality traits to an extraordinary, frightening degree.
Yes, we're going to take risks. That's what life is. That's what life is. But we're not going to cross the stupid line.
There are some clinical psychologists who would, I guess, nonchalantly call her a black widow. I'm not sure if I would go that far. However, it is undeniably true, as we discussed earlier, that this kind of, well, narcissistic parenting, akin to Munchausen by proxy syndrome, as my dear friend Dr. Gad Saad would say, very well might be the obvious explanation for our Prime Minister's irate and oftentimes absurdly childish behavior. Now, Justin, who was actually proclaimed to be the future Prime Minister of Canada when he was just 4 months old by Richard Nixon, was not, as most of you know, an only child, but has, or rather had. Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. 3 younger brothers. Alexander, Kyle, and the, I guess you would say, black sheep of the family, Michelle. And now this is where the story gets, I'd say, somewhat spicy and mysterious. Michelle, who went by the name Sasha, being the youngest of the bunch and obviously the misfit of the family. Some journalists back then described him as a gray stain on the shimmering white vest of the Trudeau family, as he oftentimes got into trouble with the law due to his weed habits. However, Michelle, or Sasha, was definitely not a two-dimensional character. No, not at all. Not just a lazy pothead. He was also an adrenaline junkie, who very much liked to dabble in the extremes, which also seems to be the reason, or at least a major factor in his untimely death. So now, although this obviously might not be the best source for reasons we are all aware of, Wikipedia states, age 23. At the time, he had been working for about a year at Red Mountain Resort and living in Rossland, British Columbia. He was taking a backcountry skiing trip with some friends in Kokanee Glacier Provincial Park when he was swept into Kokanee Lake and unable to reach the shore. His companions were unable to effect a rescue, and Trudeau drowned.
Indeed, roughly 15 Canadians a year die in avalanches as booming snow sports and better equipment bring more people to try their luck. But the danger really hit home 14 months ago when the RCMP divers plunged desperately into the ice of Kokanee Lake, where Michelle Trudeau was swept away by an avalanche. They never found him.
Yes, quite a freak accident, and actually somewhat hardly believable when taking into account that there are rarely ever, one could almost say never, any avalanches during that time of the year in the Kokanee Glacier Provincial Park, let alone an avalanche powerful enough to sweep a well-skilled snowboarder like Michelle was into the adjacent Kokanee Lake. And furthermore, what Wikipedia also fails to mention is that Michelle's 3 friends who were with him on that fateful trip, well, seems like no one knows who or where they are, as they have remained anonymous throughout the last 25 years, it seems. A little bit mysterious, if you ask me. Now, what we actually know, or what we are being told, is that one of those 3 friends almost suffered the same fate as Michelle, but he somehow managed to escape from the barrage of snow before getting swept away into the lake, where they then watched the struggling Michelle fight for his life and drowning shortly after. Okay, so a total freak accident in an area where there are basically never any avalanches. The body of Michelle was never recovered, and his 3 friends, the only witnesses here, remain anonymous.
And that our son is blessed to be have his grave, the Kokanee Glacier Lake.
Some would think that these are quite a few dubious anomalies if this string of events happened to a John Doe Joe Schmo. But considering the fact we are talking about the Trudeaus here, makes it even more, well, let's call it how it is, unbelievable. And speaking of being unbelievable, now what really tickled my tinfoil hat here, and you can look all of this up, of course. At first I did not believe it myself. That fatal November day Michelle died in 1998, Friday the 13th. I kid you not, Friday the darn 13th, as if some third-class drama writers from Los Angeles came up with that whole cheap script.
Et la deuxième question?
There was something familiar about the self-confidence of the man at the podium and about the smile of his mother, who hasn't smiled much since her youngest son was swept away by an avalanche.
If Michelle had decided to stay home and play chess and Nintendo, he would have been fine. But he chose to go out there, and that's what made the difference.
Now let me finish with this one simple question. Would you ever go backcountry skiing with your weedhead friends on a Friday the 13th if your brother was Justin Trudeau? Now I'm not so sure of that. Not so sure of that, my friends. Barack Masafaka.